I knew something was wrong the moment I saw the bright orange violation notice stapled to my heated mailbox on that freezing January morning in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My name is Henry Sorenson, and I had lived in the Whispering Pines subdivision for 3 years without a single problem. I moved here from Chicago after accepting a job at a tech startup downtown, attracted by the reasonable housing prices and the promise of a quiet neighborhood. The house was a modest 2-story colonial with vinyl siding, a decent yard, and most importantly, it was mine. Well, mine and the bank's for the next 27 years, but you get the idea. The heated mailbox had been my pride and joy since I installed it last November. Anyone who has lived through a Minnesota winter knows the struggle of dealing with frozen mail, ice-encrusted mailbox doors, and the constant worry about important documents getting damaged by the elements. The heated mailbox was a legitimate solution, sold by reputable retailers and specifically designed for harsh winter climates. It had a small heating element that kept the interior just warm enough to prevent freezing and ice buildup, powered by a solar panel on top with a battery backup. The whole thing cost me nearly $800, but it was worth every penny. I pulled the notice off, leaving a small tear in the wood grain finish of the mailbox post. The letter was printed on HOA letterhead with aggressive bolded text that made my blood pressure rise just reading it. Violation notice. Your mailbox is not in compliance with Whispering Pines HOA Architectural Guidelines Section 7.3. You have 14 days to remove the unauthorized structure and replace IT with an approved mailbox design. Failure to comply will result in fines of $100 per day and potential legal action. Below that was a signature I had come to recognize over the past few months. Brenda Thompson, HOA president. Of course it was Brenda. It was always Brenda. I had only interacted with Brenda a handful of times, but each encounter had been progressively more irritating than the last. She was a woman in her late 40s, with the kind of aggressively blonde hair that came from a box, and the permanent expression of someone who had just smelled something unpleasant. Her favorite hobby appeared to be prowling the neighborhood in her white Mercedes SUV, looking for violations to cite. She had already sent me warnings about my grass being half an inch too tall in August, and about leaving my garbage cans visible from the street for 20 minutes past the designated time in September. But this was different. This was about mail delivery, and I was pretty sure the HOA did not have the authority they thought they did. I went inside, poured myself a second cup of coffee, and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. The morning sun streamed through the windows, highlighting the dust motes floating in the air. Outside, the temperature was hovering around 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and a light snow was beginning to fall. Perfect mailbox freezing weather. After about an hour of research, I had found exactly what I needed. Federal law, specifically Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 1705, dealt with the destruction of letterboxes and mail. More importantly, postal regulations gave significant authority to the United States Postal Service regarding mailbox installation and maintenance. While HOAs could have some say in the appearance of mailboxes, they could not interfere with mail delivery or require changes that would negatively impact postal service. Armed with this information, I decided my first call should be to the local post office. I looked up the number for the Maple Grove station, which serviced my neighborhood, and dialed. The phone rang 4 times before a gruff voice answered. Maple Grove Post Office, Postmaster William speaking. Hi, my name is Henry Sorenson. I live in the Whispering Pines subdivision, and I have a question about my mailbox and HOA regulations." There was a pause and then a heavy sigh. "Let me guess. Brenda Thompson," I actually laughed. "You know her, son. Every carrier in this district knows Brenda Thompson." "What did she do this time?" I explained the situation, reading him the violation notice word for word. As I talked, I could hear papers shuffling in the background. "Okay, here's the thing," Postmaster Williams said when I finished. "Your heated mailbox, is it one of those models from Northern Mail or Freeze Free?" "It's the Freeze Free 3000. Right. We have those all over the northern routes. They are actually approved by USPs because they make our carriers' jobs easier and protect the mail. Your HOA cannot force you to remove it if it interferes with mail delivery, which a frozen solid mailbox certainly does." "So what should I do?" "Write them back, cite postal regulations, and tell them to contact me if they have questions. Actually, you know what? Give me your address. I will send them an official letter myself. I am tired of HOAs in this district thinking they can override federal mail regulations." I gave him my address and thanked him profusely. Postmaster Williams told me he would have something in writing within 2 business days, and that I should not remove the mailbox under any circumstances. Feeling vindicated, I decided to respond to the HOA notice immediately. I drafted a polite but firm letter explaining that my mailbox was USPS approved, that it served a legitimate function in protecting mail delivery during harsh weather, and that federal postal regulations superseded HOA architectural guidelines when it came to mail receptacles. I printed it out, signed it, and dropped it in the HOA's mailbox, which was located in a small office attached to the community center near the subdivision entrance. 2 days passed without incident. Then, on Thursday evening, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Brenda Thompson standing on my porch, violation notice in hand, her face the color of a ripe tomato. Behind her stood another woman I recognized as Linda Morrison, the HOA vice president. Linda was quieter than Brenda, but no less committed to enforcing every minor rule in the association bylaws. "Mr. Sorenson," Brenda said, her voice dripping with barely controlled anger, "did you really think you could just ignore a direct order from the HOA board?" I did not ignore it. I responded with relevant federal regulations that supersede your authority. Nothing supersedes our authority within this community. We have architectural guidelines that were established to maintain property values, and your tacky, oversized mailbox violates those guidelines. I took a deep breath, reminding myself to stay calm. It's not oversized. It is a standard mailbox with a heating element, and I have been in contact with the postmaster, who has confirmed that it is USPS approved and that you cannot force me to remove it. Linda spoke up for the first time. "The postmaster does not make decisions about what happens in our community. The homeowners do, through the HOA board. Actually, when it comes to mail delivery, the postmaster does have that authority. Federal law protects mail delivery, and that includes the receptacles used for mail." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "We will see about that. You have 12 days left to comply. If you do not, we will begin assessing fines, and we have the authority to place a lien on your property if those fines go unpaid." "I would advise against that," I said, feeling my own anger rising now. "Because when the postmaster sends you his letter, which should arrive tomorrow, you are going to realize that you do not have the legal standing you think you do." "Are you threatening us?" Brenda demanded. "No, I am informing you of the facts. There is a difference." They left in a huff, marching back to Brenda's Mercedes and speeding off down the street. I closed the door and leaned against it, my heart pounding. I hated confrontation, but I was not about to let the HOA bully me into removing something that was both legal and practical. The next day, as promised, a letter arrived from Postmaster Williams. It was addressed to the Whispering Pines HOA board and copied to me. The letter was beautifully bureaucratic and absolutely unambiguous. It stated that the heated mailbox at my address was in full compliance with USP's regulations, that it served a legitimate function in protecting mail delivery during inclement weather, and that any attempt to force its removal would be considered interference with mail delivery, a federal offense. The letter went on to explain that while HOAs could have aesthetic preferences for mailboxes, they could not require changes that would negatively impact postal service or mail protection. The letter concluded with Postmaster Williams's direct phone number and an invitation to call if the HOA had any questions. I made 3 copies of the letter. One I kept for my records, one I planned to bring to the next HOA meeting, and one I delivered to the HOA office that afternoon. The weekend was quiet, and I allowed myself to hope that the matter was settled. Monday morning proved me wrong. I woke up at 6:30 as usual and went through my morning routine. Coffee, shower, check email, get dressed for work. I was walking out to my car around 7:45 when I noticed something was off. My mailbox was gone, not damaged, not vandalized, gone, completely removed from my property. Where my $800 heated mailbox had stood, there was just a hole in the ground and scattered pieces of broken concrete from the base. I stood there in shock for a full minute, my briefcase hanging from my hand, my breath making clouds in the frigid air. Then I pulled out my phone and took pictures from every angle. The hole, the broken concrete, the disturbed snow around the area. Everything. My mail carrier was going to arrive in about 30 minutes. Without a mailbox, where would my mail go? This was not just an HOA violation anymore. This was theft. This was destruction of property. This was interference with mail delivery. I called in to work and told them I would be late. Then I called the non-emergency police line. The officer who arrived 20 minutes later was a young guy named Peterson. He looked at the missing mailbox, looked at the HOA violation notice I showed him, and shook his head. So let me get this straight. You have a letter from the postmaster saying the mailbox is legal, but the HOA removed it anyway. That is what it looks like. I went to bed last night and it was here. I woke up this morning and it is gone. Do you have security cameras? I kicked myself mentally. No, I have been meaning to install some, but I have not gotten around to it yet. Officer Peterson wrote down all the information and gave me a case number. This is technically theft and destruction of property. The value puts it in misdemeanor territory, but combined with the mail interference angle, it could be more serious. I would recommend calling the postal inspector. They take this stuff very seriously. The postal inspector. I had not even thought of that. After Officer Peterson left, I called the Maple Grove post office again. Postmaster Williams answered on the second ring. Mr. Sorenson, I was just about to call you. My carrier reported that your mailbox is missing. It was removed sometime during the night. I have filed a police report, and I have pictures. The officer suggested I contact the postal inspector. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Postmaster Williams spoke again, his voice was hard. I am going to give you the number for Inspector Chen at the Minneapolis office. He handles mail interference cases. Tell him everything and tell him I sent you. This is unacceptable. I called Inspector Chen immediately. He asked me to email him all the documentation I had, the HOA notices, the response letter, Postmaster Williams's letter, and the photos from this morning. He said he would open an investigation, and that someone would be in contact with me within 24 hours. For the time being, the mail carrier left my mail at the post office for me to pick up. I took a long lunch and drove over to collect it. There were several bills, a package I had been waiting for, and, ironically, another letter from the HOA. I opened it in my car. It was a congratulatory notice informing me that I had come into compliance with architectural guidelines and thanking me for my cooperation. There was no mention of who had removed the mailbox or where it was now. I photographed the letter and sent it to Inspector Chen. That evening, I went to Home Depot and bought a basic, standard black mailbox and post. It cost $45 and took me an hour to install in the frozen ground. It was ugly, it offered no protection from the weather, and it would probably freeze shut during the next cold snap, but it would hold mail until this mess was sorted out. I also bought a security camera system. 2 cameras, one pointing at the street and mailbox, one at my front door. I spent half the night getting them set up and synced to my phone. If anyone came near my property again, I would have video evidence. The next morning, Tuesday, I got a call from Inspector Chen. He asked if I could meet him at my house during my lunch break. I agreed and left work at noon. Inspector Chen was a serious man in his early 50s, wearing a dark suit and carrying a leather portfolio. We stood in my driveway while I showed him where the heated mailbox had been and where the new basic one now stood. "I have reviewed all your documentation," he said. "The HOA clearly removed your mailbox after being informed that it was federally protected. That is interference with mail delivery, which violates Title 18, Section 1702. It is also theft and destruction of property under state law. What happens now?" "I am going to interview the HOA board members, starting with Brenda Thompson. I will also be requesting any documentation they have regarding the removal. If they contracted someone to do it, I need to know who. If board members did it themselves, that is important too. Can I get my heated mailbox back? If we find it, yes. If it was destroyed, you can pursue restitution through criminal or civil court. I will do everything I can to locate it." Inspector Chen left, and I went back to work, though I could barely concentrate. My coworkers noticed I was distracted, but I did not want to get into the whole story. It sounded absurd even to me. A heated mailbox battle with the HOA that had escalated to federal investigators. That evening, my next-door neighbor, a friendly guy in his 30s named Marcus, came over while I was checking my new security cameras. "Hey, Henry, I heard about your mailbox situation. That is insane. You have no idea. Listen, I do not know if this helps, but I saw something Sunday night. I was up late, probably around 2 in the morning, and I heard a truck idling outside. I looked out my window and saw someone working near your mailbox with a flashlight. I thought maybe you were doing some kind of maintenance or something, so I did not think much of it. But now that I know what happened, I figured you should know." My heart rate picked up. "Did you see who it was? Or what kind of truck?" "It was dark, but it looked like a pickup. Maybe white or light gray. I could not see the person clearly, but I think it was a woman. The build looked feminine, and I saw blonde hair when the person turned. Brenda. I do not want to accuse anyone, but yeah, that was my first thought too. I feel bad now that I did not go out and check what was happening. Do not worry about it. This information is really helpful. Would you be willing to give a statement to the postal inspector if he asks?" "Absolutely. This HOA has gotten way too power-hungry. Half the neighborhood is afraid to do anything without checking with Brenda first. It is ridiculous." After Marcus left, I immediately called Inspector Chen and relayed the information. He said he would follow up with Marcus and that this kind of eyewitness testimony could be crucial. Wednesday morning brought another, unwelcome surprise. I found a notice on my door stating that I was being fined $500 for unauthorized removal of HOA-approved property, and another $1,000 for installation of new property without architectural approval. The basic mailbox I had installed, the one that looked like every other mailbox in the neighborhood, apparently needed approval. I was beyond angry now. I was being fined for fixing the problem they had created. I forwarded the notice to Inspector Chen and my attorney. Yes, I had finally broken down and hired an attorney Tuesday afternoon. His name was Richard Park, and he specialized in property law and HOA disputes. He had been recommended by a colleague at work who had gone through his own HOA nightmare a few years back. Richard called me Wednesday afternoon. "Henry, I have reviewed everything you sent me. The HOA is clearly in the wrong here, and they keep making it worse. These fines are not enforceable under these circumstances. I am going to send them a cease and desist letter today, and I am putting them on notice that we will pursue legal action if they continue this harassment. How much is this going to cost me? Let us worry about that later. Honestly, based on what I am seeing, you have grounds for a lawsuit that could result in the HOA paying your attorney fees plus damages. These people have violated federal law and are now trying to fine you for their own misconduct. A judge is not going to look kindly on that." Thursday morning, I woke up to find my new basic mailbox knocked over. The security camera caught everything. At 3:15 in the morning, a white pickup truck pulled up. A woman got out, wearing a dark coat and a winter hat. She walked up to my mailbox with a baseball bat and swung at it 4 times, knocking it clean off the post. Then she got back in her truck and drove away. The video was not perfectly clear because of the darkness and falling snow, but you could make out the truck's license plate, and when the woman turned toward the camera, you could see her face for just a moment. It was Brenda Thompson. I immediately called Inspector Chen. He came to my house within an hour, reviewed the footage, and his expression went from serious to grim. "That is clear enough," he said. "I can identify her. I can see her committing destruction of property, and I can see the truck's plate. I am going to coordinate with the local police, and we are going to pick her up today." "Picked up? Like arrested?" "Yes, Mr. Sorenson. She has now committed multiple federal offenses related to mail interference, plus vandalism and destruction of property under state law. This is not a civil HOA dispute anymore. This is criminal." I spent Thursday in a daze. I called Richard Park and updated him. He was both stunned and pleased, if that combination makes sense. Stunned at how far Brenda had taken things, pleased that we now had indisputable evidence of criminal wrongdoing. By Thursday evening, the neighborhood was buzzing with gossip. Brenda Thompson had been arrested that afternoon. 2 police cars and Inspector Chen had shown up at her house. According to Marcus, who texted me updates in real time, she had screamed and protested but eventually been let out in handcuffs. Her husband, a quiet man named Robert who worked in insurance, looked absolutely mortified. Friday morning, I received a call from Linda Morrison, the HOA vice president. "Mr. Sorenson, I want to apologize on behalf of the board." Her voice was shaking. "We had no idea that Brenda was taking these actions. The rest of the board never approved the removal of your mailbox, and we certainly never authorized her to vandalize your property. When we found out what she did, we were horrified. You sent me those fines notices," I pointed out. "Those were generated by Brenda using HOA letterhead. She apparently has had access to the accounts and was sending things without board approval. We are in the process of conducting an internal audit. We suspect she may have been abusing her position in other ways as well." That is not my problem, Linda. I know. What I am calling to say is that we are voiding all fines against you. We are formally withdrawing any objections to your heated mailbox, and we would like to offer to pay for a replacement. We just want to make this right. I have an attorney now. All communication needs to go through him. Of course, I understand. I just wanted you to know that not everyone on the board supported what happened. Most of us did not even know about it. After I hung up, I felt a mix of emotions. Relief that the HOA was backing down, but also anger that it had taken Brenda being arrested for them to take me seriously. How many other homeowners had she bullied into compliance on questionable issues? Richard Park called me later that day. The HOA's attorney contacted me. They are offering full restitution, elimination of all fines, written approval for your heated mailbox, and compensation for your legal fees. They also want you to agree not to sue the HOA itself, though you would still be able to pursue action against Brenda Thompson personally. What do you think? I think it is a reasonable offer. The truth is, the other board members probably did not know what Brenda was doing. She was acting outside her authority. You could sue the HOA and probably win, but it would be expensive and time-consuming. This way you get compensated, you get your mailbox rights confirmed, and you move on with your life. Okay, let us take the deal. The following week was a whirlwind of paperwork. The HOA issued a formal apology letter, delivered personally by Linda Morrison. They cut me a check for $3,000, covering the cost of the original heated mailbox, the temporary basic mailbox, security cameras, and my initial attorney fees. They also updated the architectural guidelines to explicitly allow heated mailboxes and other weather protection devices that complied with USP's regulations. Brenda Thompson, meanwhile, was facing multiple charges. The federal mail interference charge was the most serious, carrying potential penalties of up to 3 years in prison and fines. The state vandalism and theft charges added to her legal troubles. Her attorney tried to argue that she was just overly zealous about protecting property values, but the video evidence was damning. Inspector Chen's investigation also revealed that Brenda had been embezzling small amounts of money from the HOA's landscaping budget for over 2 years, adding fraud charges to her list of problems. I ordered a new heated mailbox, this time the upgraded freeze-free 4000 model with even better insulation and a solar panel that could charge in lower light conditions. It cost $900, but the HOA's check more than covered it. Installation took a few hours on a Saturday morning, and I made sure every step was documented on my security cameras. Marcus came over with a 6-pack of beer when I finished. We sat on my porch in the weak February sunshine, drinking and watching the occasional car drive by. "So it is really over?" he asked. "I think so. Brenda is out as HOA president. Linda Morrison is taking over temporarily until they can hold elections in March. The guidelines have been updated. I got compensated. Yeah, I think it is over. You know what the crazy thing is? Your heated mailbox looks totally normal. Like, if Brenda had not made a big deal about it, I would not have even noticed it was different from anyone else's mailbox. That is because it is not different. It is just slightly taller to accommodate the heating element. But Brenda saw it as a challenge to her authority. Power trip. Massive power trip. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal over the following weeks. Brenda's house went up for sale in March. I heard through the rumor mill that she took a plea deal, avoiding prison time but getting probation, community service, and having to pay restitution to the HOA for the embezzled funds. Her husband Robert apparently filed for divorce, though I never confirmed that directly. The HOA held elections in March as promised. Linda Morrison ran for president and won easily. Her platform was basically, "I am not Brenda Thompson," which was good enough for most people. She appointed a new board that included Marcus, which I thought was a good sign. One of Linda's first acts as president was to review all the violation notices and fines issued during Brenda's tenure. She discovered that Brenda had been selectively enforcing rules, targeting certain homeowners she did not like while ignoring violations by her friends. Several fines were voided, and apology letters went out to multiple residents. My mail carrier, a woman named Joyce who had been on the route for 12 years, told me one morning in April that she appreciated the heated mailbox. "Makes my life easier during winter," she said. "I have seen a few other people installing them now too. It is a good idea." And she was right. By the following winter, at least 6 other houses in Whispering Pines had heated mailboxes. Linda Morrison made a point of updating the newsletter to say they were approved and encouraged, especially for residents who received important medications or documents through the mail. Inspector Chen closed his investigation in May. He sent me a letter thanking me for my cooperation and noting that my case had prompted a broader review of HOA interference with mail delivery throughout the district. The Postal Service was apparently working on new guidelines to help mail carriers and homeowners navigate HOA restrictions. Postmaster Williams called me in June, almost 6 months after the initial violation notice. "Mr. Sorenson, I wanted to follow up and see how everything turned out." "Good, actually. Really good." The HOA backed down, Brenda was prosecuted, and several other homeowners in the neighborhood now have heated mailboxes too. Outstanding. You know, in my 28 years with the Postal Service, I have dealt with a lot of HOA nonsense, but your case takes the cake. It is going to be used as a training example for new postal inspectors. Really? Yep. It is a perfect example of HOA overreach and the importance of federal mail protection laws. Your documentation was excellent, by the way. The photos, the timeline, keeping copies of everything. You made Inspector Chen's job much easier. I just did not want to be pushed around. Well, you stood up for yourself and made things better for other people in the process. That is something to be proud of. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee, looking out the window at my mailbox. It stood there, unassuming and functional, its small solar panel glinting in the morning sun. The grass around it was green and neatly trimmed. The neighborhood was quiet, peaceful. It was strange to think that this simple object had caused such upheaval. But it was not really about the mailbox, was it? It was about power, authority, and one person thinking she could override federal law to enforce her own preferences. It was about standing up to bullying, even when it came from an organization that was supposed to be serving the community. I thought about all the homeowners who had been intimidated by Brenda over the years. The people who removed decorations they liked because she said they were not allowed. The people who paid fines for minor infractions that were selectively enforced. The people who were afraid to improve their properties because they might attract HOA scrutiny. In a way, my heated mailbox battle had freed them too. The new board under Linda Morrison was reasonable, focused on actual community improvement rather than petty enforcement. They fixed potholes, organized neighborhood events, and updated the community center. The architectural guidelines were reviewed and streamlined, removing many of the arbitrary restrictions Brenda had championed. Richard Park sent me his final bill in July. It was reasonable, and I paid it gladly. He told me that word of the case had spread through the legal community, and he was getting calls from other homeowners dealing with HOA overreach. He was considering specializing in that area of law. You have no idea how many people are living under the thumb of petty HOA dictators, he said. Your case showed that you can fight back successfully if you know your rights and have proper documentation. I ran into Robert Thompson, Brenda's ex-husband, at the grocery store in August. It was awkward at first. He was in the produce section, examining tomatoes when I turned the corner with my cart. "Henry," he said, his voice neutral. "Robert, how are you doing?" he sighed. "Better, honestly. The divorce was finalized last month. I moved to an apartment in Minnetonka. No HOA. I am sorry about everything that happened. Do not be. I am not. I knew Brenda was getting obsessive about the HOA, but I did not realize how bad it had gotten until the police showed up. Finding out about the embezzlement was the final straw. I should have left years ago. Still, it cannot have been easy. No, but necessary. She needs help, professional help. I hope she gets it. But that is not my responsibility anymore." We parted cordially, and I thought about how many lives Brenda's actions had affected. Her own marriage destroyed. Her reputation ruined. The HOA's credibility damaged. All because she could not accept that a homeowner had installed a legally protected mailbox designed to improve mail delivery. The first snow of the next winter came in November. I was ready for it. My heated mailbox worked perfectly, keeping the interior dry and accessible even during a 3-day blizzard that dumped 18 inches of snow on Minneapolis. Joyce, my mail carrier, left a thank you note in my mailbox along with my regular mail, saying my house was one of the easiest on her route during the storm. I sent a photo of the mailbox covered in snow, with the note visible inside, to Postmaster Williams with a message, "System working as intended." He replied with a thumbs-up emoji, which made me laugh. I had not expected a postmaster to be the emoji type. The Whispering Pines HOA held a holiday party in December. It was the first one in 3 years, apparently. Under Brenda's leadership, such social events had been eliminated in favor of putting money toward enforcement and architectural compliance. Linda Morrison brought back the tradition, and it was held at the community center with hot chocolate, cookies, and a visit from a somewhat sad-looking mall Santa. I went, partly out of curiosity and partly because Marcus insisted. It was surprisingly pleasant. Neighbors I had only waved to before actually introduced themselves. Several people thanked me for standing up to Brenda, saying it had encouraged them to be less afraid of the HOA. One woman, an elderly widow named Margaret, told me that Brenda had tried to fine her for having the wrong color flowers in her garden. "You showed us we do not have to just accept everything the HOA says," Margaret told me. "I planted whatever flowers I wanted this year, and nobody said a word." Linda Morrison gave a short speech thanking everyone for coming and promising that the new board was committed to serving homeowners rather than policing them. She got genuine applause. On the drive home, Marcus and I talked about how different the neighborhood felt. "It is like people can breathe again," he said. "I know that sounds dramatic, but it is true. Brenda had everyone walking on eggshells." "Power corrupts," I said, "especially in little kingdoms like HOAs where there is not much oversight. Are you going to run for the board next election?" "Absolutely not. I did my part. Now I just want to live in peace and not think about architectural guidelines or violation notices." Fair enough. Christmas came and went. My parents visited from Chicago, and my dad got a huge kick out of the heated mailbox story. He told everyone at Christmas dinner, embellishing the details to make me sound more heroic than I was. My mom just shook her head and said she was glad I did not live in an HOA when they bought their house 40 years ago. "We have a neighbor who paints his house a new color every 5 years," she said. Sometimes it looks nice, sometimes it does not, but it is his house. That is freedom. The new year brought changes. Linda Morrison announced that the HOA would be adopting new bylaws that included term limits for board members and a clearer process for homeowners to appeal decisions. There would also be quarterly town halls where residents could voice concerns directly to the board. I attended the first town hall in February, 2 years after my heated mailbox saga began. The community center was packed. People clearly wanted to participate now that the board seemed approachable. One homeowner asked about installing solar panels. Linda said they were allowed as long as they met building codes and did not pose safety hazards. Another asked about home businesses. Linda said they were fine as long as they did not create excessive noise or traffic. Someone asked about fence heights. Linda pulled up the relevant guideline and explained it clearly, noting that variances could be requested if there were legitimate reasons. It was all so reasonable. This was what an HOA was supposed to be like, I realized. A group of neighbors working together to maintain a pleasant community, not an authoritarian regime nitpicking every detail. After the meeting, Linda pulled me aside. "I wanted to thank you again, Henry. What you went through was awful, but it exposed a lot of problems that needed to be addressed. This neighborhood is better because you stood your ground. I just did not want to lose my mailbox," she laughed. "It is always something small that triggers big changes. A mailbox, a bus seat, a tea shipment. History is full of examples." I had not thought about it that way, but she was right. Sometimes standing up for something small is really standing up for a principle that matters much more. Spring arrived, and with it came the annual HOA assessment of community projects. The previous board under Brenda had spent most of the budget on enforcement and legal fees. The new board under Linda invested in playground upgrades, street repairs, and better lighting. The neighborhood looked better and felt safer. My heated mailbox continued to perform flawlessly. It had proven its worth during the harsh winter, and I knew it would be ready for the next one. More importantly, it had become a symbol, at least to me, of the importance of knowing your rights and not being intimidated by petty authority. Inspector Chen contacted me one last time in April. He was retiring from the Postal Service after 30 years, and he wanted to let me know that my case had been one of his favorites. "Most mail interference cases are pretty dry," he said. "But yours had everything. Clear evidence, a satisfying resolution, and a villain who actually got punished. It is rare that things work out so cleanly." "I am glad I could provide you with some entertainment," I joked. "More than that. You did everything right. You researched the law, you documented everything, you worked with the system instead of against it. That is how you win these battles." After we hung up, I thought about his words. The system had worked, but only because I knew how to use it. How many people did not know their rights? How many people gave in to HOA demands because they assumed the HOA must be right? I decided to write up my experience and post it on a few online forums dedicated to HOA issues. I laid out the timeline, explained the relevant laws, and shared what I had learned. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of comments from people sharing their own HOA horror stories or thanking me for the information. Several people said they were going to fight back against their own HOA overreach, armed with the knowledge that federal mail regulations could protect them. One person reached out privately, a woman in Wisconsin who was dealing with almost the exact same situation. Her HOA was demanding she remove her heated mailbox. I connected her with Postmaster Williams and shared my documentation as a template. 3 weeks later, she reported back that her HOA had backed down immediately once the postmaster got involved. She thanked me profusely, saying I had saved her thousands of dollars and months of stress. It felt good to help. It felt like my headache had purpose beyond just my own situation. Summer brought long, warm evenings. I sat on my porch often, enjoying the Minnesota weather while it was pleasant. Neighbors walked by with dogs and kids. People waved. The neighborhood felt like a community now, not a collection of houses under surveillance. Marcus got engaged to his girlfriend Lisa. They were planning a fall wedding. He asked if I would be a groomsman, and I agreed. We had become good friends through the Mailbox ordeal and its aftermath. You know, if it had not been for all that craziness, I probably would not have gotten involved with the HOA board, he said one evening over beers. And if I had not gotten involved, I would not have met Lisa. She joined the social committee last summer. So I am responsible for your relationship, indirectly. In a weird, roundabout way involving a heated mailbox and a crazy HOA president, yes. We laughed about that. Life was strange sometimes. A mailbox battle leads to an arrest, which leads to HOA reform, which leads to community involvement, which leads to romance. The butterfly effect in action. The 2-year anniversary of the original violation notice came in January. It was another cold Minnesota morning, and I stood at my kitchen window with my coffee, looking at my heated mailbox. The snow was falling lightly, and the mailbox's solar panel was doing its job, keeping the battery charged despite the weak winter sun. My mail arrived on time, protected from the elements, accessible to Joyce without her having to struggle with ice or frozen metal. It was exactly what I had intended when I bought the thing 3 years ago. A practical solution to a real problem. The fact that it had sparked a federal investigation, an arrest, HOA reform, and a small internet following was never part of the plan. But I did not regret any of it. Sometimes you have to stand up for what is right, even when it seems like a small thing. Especially when it seems like a small thing. Because if we do not stand up to petty tyrants in our neighborhoods, who will? If we do not defend our rights when they are violated over something as minor as a mailbox, how can we expect to defend them when something more important is at stake? The doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was a delivery driver with a package. He glanced at my mailbox. "Hey, is that one of those heated mailboxes?" he asked. "Yeah, why? I have been thinking about getting one. Minnesota winters are brutal. Does it work well?" "Works great. Kept my mail dry and accessible all winter." "Cool. Where did you get it?" I told him about the freeze-free 4000 model and where to order it online. He thanked me and left. A small interaction, but it made me smile. My mailbox was helping people, even if just by being an example of what was possible. That evening, I got an email from Richard Park, my attorney. He was forwarding an article from a legal journal about HOA overreach and the importance of federal mail regulations. My case was mentioned, though my name was changed to protect privacy. The article used it as an example of how homeowners could successfully challenge HOA authority when backed by federal law. "You are famous in legal circles," Richard wrote in his email. Well, infamous. The HOA attorney community probably does not like you very much. I did not care if HOA attorneys liked me. I cared that homeowners knew they had rights and options. Life continued in its normal rhythm. Work, home, weekends, seasons changing. The heated mailbox kept working. The HOA kept being reasonable. Brenda Thompson remained out of the picture, presumably rebuilding her life somewhere else. I hoped she had learned something from the experience, but I had my doubts. By the 3rd winter, heated mailboxes were becoming common throughout Whispering Pines. The local hardware store started stocking them after getting multiple requests. Joyce, my mail carrier, told me that her route was now one of the easiest in the district during winter because so many people had upgraded their mailboxes. "You started a trend," she said one morning, handing me a package. "Just tried to solve a problem." Sometimes that is all it takes. The neighborhood continued to thrive under Linda Morrison's leadership. Property values actually increased, despite Brenda's warnings that my heated mailbox would destroy them. Turns out people liked living in a neighborhood with reasonable HOA leadership and modern amenities. Marcus and Lisa got married in October, a beautiful ceremony at a venue overlooking one of Minnesota's 10,000 lakes. During his speech at the reception, Marcus made a joke about heated mailboxes bringing people together. Most guests did not get the reference, but those of us who had lived through it laughed knowingly. I dated on and off, but never seriously. Work kept me busy, and I had developed some hobbies during the whole mailbox saga. Photography, for one. The security cameras had sparked an interest in capturing moments, and I started taking my camera on walks around the neighborhood and local parks. Minnesota was beautiful when you took the time to notice. The fourth winter brought record cold. Temperatures dropped to 20 below zero for a week straight. My heated mailbox earned its keep during that stretch. Regular mailboxes in the neighborhood froze shut. One neighbor, who had never upgraded, had to use a hair dryer just to get his mailbox open. I felt a little smug, but tried not to show it. The HOA board continued to evolve. Linda Morrison served 2 terms and then stepped down, endorsing a younger homeowner named James to replace her. James had a background in nonprofit management and brought fresh ideas about community building. The Whispering Pines HOA became something of a model in the district, other neighborhoods asking how they had turned things around so dramatically. The answer was always the same: accountability, transparency, and remembering that the HOA existed to serve homeowners, not control them. I attended fewer and fewer HOA meetings as time went on, not because I was disengaged, but because things were running smoothly and I did not need to be vigilant anymore. I could trust that the board would make reasonable decisions and that homeowners would be treated fairly. It was a strange feeling after the intensity of those first few months battling Brenda. Like the weight had been lifted. I could just live my life without worrying about violation notices or power-tripping HOA presidents. 5 years after the original violation notice, I was sitting on my porch on a summer evening when a car pulled up. A young couple got out, looking at the house across the street, which had a for sale sign in the yard. They walked around for a few minutes, clearly interested. Then they noticed me and came over. "Hi, we are thinking about buying that house," the woman said, gesturing across the street. "Do you like this neighborhood?" "I do. It is a good community." "What about the HOA? We have heard horror stories about HOAs." I smiled. "We had some issues a few years back, but they have been resolved. The current board is excellent. Reasonable people focused on making the neighborhood nice, not on enforcing petty rules." "That is good to hear. We were worried. Just make sure to read the bylaws and know your rights. Most importantly, participate. Go to meetings, vote in elections. An HOA is only as good as the people running it." They thanked me and went back to looking at the house. I hoped they bought it. They seemed like good people. Later that night, I stood in my driveway, looking at my mailbox one last time before heading to bed. It looked the same as it always did, unremarkable and functional. But to me, it represented something bigger. It represented the fight to maintain autonomy in your own home. The importance of knowing the law. The power of standing up to bullies, even when they hide behind official titles. My heated mailbox was just a mailbox. But it was also a symbol of resistance against petty tyranny. a reminder that federal law protects essential services, and proof that ordinary people can win against entrenched power structures if they are willing to fight. The porch light illuminated the falling snow, and I could see the solar panel on top of the mailbox, doing its job even in the dim light. Somewhere inside, the heating element was keeping the interior just warm enough to protect tomorrow's mail. The system was working exactly as designed. I went inside, locked the door, and went to bed, secure in the knowledge that my mail would be safe, my rights were protected, and my neighborhood was in good hands. The battle of the heated mailbox was long over, but its lessons remained: stand up for what is right. Know your rights. Document everything. Work with the system when you can. And never let anyone bully you into giving up something that is both legal and practical, no matter how official they seem, because in the end, I kept my heated mailbox. Brenda Thompson lost everything. And the neighborhood became a better place for everyone. That was all I had ever wanted. A simple solution to a practical problem and the freedom to implement it without harassment. It should not have been a battle, but it was. And I was glad I fought it, because the outcome benefited far more people than just me. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. New neighbors moving in across from you next week. Talked to them today. They seem cool. Said you were very helpful when they were checking out the neighborhood. I texted back. Hope they like it here. If they do not like heated mailboxes, they are in for a surprise, Marcus replied with a laughing emoji. I smiled and set my phone on the nightstand. Outside, snow continued to fall on my heated mailbox, on the quiet street, on the peaceful neighborhood that had been through turmoil and come out stronger. The story of HOA overreach, federal law, and one stubborn homeowner with a practical solution to a winter problem had ended exactly as it should have, with justice served and community restored.